Okay, so we are looking at a shave biopsy of a specimen that happened to be on the scalp of an older gentleman. And you can see a very dense proliferation of cells. Some of them look lymphoid and maybe perivascular, and then others look epithelioid to maybe even spindled in nature. And it's kind of hard to tell where the perivascular lymphocytic inflammation begins and ends, because there seems to be an epithelioid population that might even be forming new areas of lumen here. You can see that some of these areas have open lumen and maybe some endothelial or epithelioid cells that appear to be in the lumen, and they appear to be stacking, very pleomorphic. On higher power, you'll see prominent nucleoli. If you scan around the slide long enough, you'll find several areas of mitotic activity as well. So just scrolling around to give you a picture of what the morphology looks like in the cells. So at this point, you should be thinking of a differential diagnosis for epithelioid proliferation that looks to be somewhat malignant. And what types of stains you would want to do to work this up. And just to show you, some of the areas overlying it are intact. There's no ulceration. But there were some areas that showed maybe some superficial ulceration or erosion in some areas. Let's find it. Maybe a little bit of a crust here. Okay. So some type of spindle to epithelioid cell population. There's some areas that look like it might be forming lumen, but it's at this point it's undifferentiated. So you definitely want to take a look at your keratin stain as well as your vascular stains. And, obviously on the scalp of an older person, you might think about an atypical fibroxanthoma as a diagnosis of exclusion that stains negative for everything else. So here's your keratin stain. So you can see that it's highlighting the overlying epidermis. It's highlighting the sebaceous glands. It's highlighting the hair follicles. This is a broad AE1-3 and a CAM 5.2. So it's highlighting all keratins just as a broad screen here. And it's negative in the neoplastic population, as you can see here. Let's take a look at the ERG stain, which is a vascular endothelial marker stain. So it's diffusely positive in the neoplastic cells. So this is consistent with an epithelioid angiosarcoma. It fits with the fact that we saw some areas of neolumen formation, but I've seen cases of angiosarcoma that are just filled with these atypical epithelioid to spindled cells. And this is pretty specific ERG stain here. So it just goes to show you that angiosarcomas can be so proliferative, it's hard to immediately tell what it is. So in this case, it's covering pretty much the entire biopsy specimen here. And just to show you, pretty much every section is positive for ERG diffusely. Maybe not as much here where you were getting a little bit more inflammation. And if you look at, let's say, a P40 stain just for squame, another marker of squame, you can see nicely highlights the epidermis, but negative in the neoplastic cells. And just as kind of a broad initial workup, it's always good to look at melanocytic stains. So you can see here, this is a double stain for melan red and SOX10 brown. And so maybe a little bit of melanocytic hyperplasia in the scalp of somebody who's chronically sun damaged. But negative in the neoplasm itself. All right, so This was a good example, and I'll show you the H&E again to end on, of an epithelioid angiosarcoma. So once you see one of these, you will not forget to think about it when you see an epithelioid atypical or neoplastic malignant proliferation on the scalp.